Can you watch a football game with friends? Like just sit there and just watch as a fan, or they always you get peppered with questions?
No, not too much, a little bit. But yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Most Monday nights, I have a couple buddies who come over, and we watch the games. And then with the Thursday night gig, I've had an opportunity to watch some Sunday games when we've been off a couple of times. And, yeah, so I'm a fan like everyone else when I get a chance to be.
All right, but then do you have the guy, the buddy, who thinks he knows as much as you know?
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And you wonder sometimes if they realize, I don't know if they know who they're sitting next to, but it's interesting. A lot of guys who seem to have all the answers, and you know what? You find that though, Dan, when you just go to a high school football game. Just sit with the parents. There's some of the best coaches in the world sitting in the stands watching these high school games.
You should keep a Super Bowl ring in your pocket just in case if you need to slip it on,
right.
just to remind people. All right, a couple things here. What's missing in Pittsburgh, aside from the obvious with Le'Veon Bell? What is missing with this team?
It's an interesting dynamic there in Pittsburgh. I thought Todd Haley was a good offensive coordinator. I thought he'd done a nice job overall for the time that he was there, and for whatever reason that didn't work out. It seemed like it was more of a personality issue than anything else. And then we've seen obviously a lot of grumblings here in the last few weeks, and I think teams go through that at times. Teams that have been together, players, coaches, whatever it might be, but. There's no doubt that takes away from what's happening on the field. Who knows? Maybe they can pull it together. I happen to think that they can with the players that they have. But when you don't have someone as talented as Le'Veon Bell and as much as he's meant to that team, that's not that that's all of it, like you said, but that's a big part of it as well.
What'd you make of the Cowboys-Seahawks game? Looking at the Cowboys offense now, I know that Jerry Jones alluded to, hey, we're sort of similar to the L.A. Rams. You saw the Rams on Thursday night.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's similar to the Rams. I think that the players they have, are terrific. And Brandon Cooks, I've been a huge fan of his since he came into the league a few years back, and then McVay. But the Cowboys, they're still... They've gotten Ezekiel Elliott going. They did against Seattle. They did yesterday again with Detroit, as you would expect. But they still are not just pulling it all together within the passing game. And although better, and they were able to get some big plays, that's what's been lacking. I still think that part of their offense has to be better if they're ultimately going to achieve what they hope to.
Have you ever seen a situation with Earl Thomas, with what you saw yesterday, where he flips off his own sidelines?
Not quite like that. I've witnessed quite a bit in Dallas over the years when I was playing, but obviously just a lot of frustration on his part. I thought it was interesting when we had the Seahawks, as you mentioned, with the Cowboys, how into the game he was. And he had not, from what I was told when we were there at their facility, he had not really talked to anybody in the building outside of just teammates. And yet on that Sunday, and maybe it was because he thought it might be the last game that he played for Seattle, and that ultimately this past week he was going to be playing for the Cowboys. I'm not sure, but he was certainly into the game, showing a lot of enthusiasm, excitement throughout that game, and then to have happen what happened yesterday is obviously a real letdown, and that's why these players want these big contracts. But I think Earl's he's an intense guy, and just a lot of frustration came out in that moment, no doubt.
Talking to Troy Aikman joining us, Dan Patrick Show. I'm going to run down some numbers here, and you tell me where we're headed with this. Back in 2014, 11 400-yard passing performances. That's the entire season.
I know where this is going.
2015, 10. 2016, 12. 2017, there were 8 such games. So far, through 62 games, we've had 12 400-yard passing games. Where are we headed, Troy?
Well, wherever we're headed, I think it's where the league wants it because of the rules that they put, or not so much the rules, but the emphasis this year on illegal contact, defensive holding. They wanted to see scoring up. It was down from last season, and it's worked. So we're seeing a lot of yards, as you said, and a lot of offense. And and that's what fans want. I think it's great. It's more fun for me to call games when there's a lot of scoring. We saw that with the Vikings and Rams last Thursday night. But it's a different game, clearly, and that's why I say that this we go and we talk to coaches every week, obviously, and we still have coaches who say, well, we got to run the ball, we got to stop the run, and you're like, what is this, 1970? I mean, that game's been changed a long time ago, and you better stop the pass. I understand. Yeah, we want to stop the run, but if you can't play pass defense and you can't throw the ball in this league, you're just simply not going to win.
Which segues into tonight with Patrick Mahomes. We keep waiting for he comes back down to earth. Does he come back down to earth tonight against Denver, Troy?
You'd like to think, or the law of averages would say that this pace can't continue, but what an impressive young guy he is, and I'm looking forward to watching him play tonight. I haven't had a chance to really sit and watch him. We'll have Kansas City at some point on a Thursday night to where I'll really be able to study him. But I've heard nothing but wonderful things about him as a person, and then of course the way that he's come out and played, and it's pretty remarkable. Alex Smith had a great year last year, yeah. And yet they were ready to give this young guy a chance and see what he could do, and he's taken advantage of it. And it'll be fun. I'm interested in watching him tonight as well. But I do think he's going to continue to have a great career.
But I think with Andy Reid, and I give the Chiefs credit because Alex Smith would have been the safe quarterback to keep and use the draft pick or draft picks on something else that could help this team. They needed to stretch the field because they weren't scaring anybody 20 yards downfield. And if I got Kelsey and I got Hill, I got a chance that, Sammy Watkins, I got a chance to hurt you. And then you have to at least acknowledge the play fake there. So Kansas City went all in with Alex Smith being a very good quarterback.
Well, that's right, and as we know, when you take a quarterback in the first round, I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that the guy's going to be a success. It's about a 50-50 chance, and so there was a lot at risk, a lot of belief in him. I went back and studied him this offseason and studied a number of these quarterbacks that I hadn't gotten a chance to really see. There wasn't much tape to watch on Mahomes. He played, in the season finale. He played in the preseason, and although I thought he did some good things in Week 17 last year, there were also some moments where you say, he's a young player who just simply hasn't played, but yet there was this excitement in Kansas City about his future, and so people were right on him, at least to this point. And I think obviously, as I said, he's going to continue to play really well. He's going to have a great career in Kansas City, and seems to have the makeup that you want from that position. But it was not without risk to make the move, and yet it has paid off. And that team has a lot of talent around him, and they're utilizing that. So Andy's done an amazing job. He has shown that ability everywhere he's been, and an ability to play within the strengths of a quarterback and be creative offensively, and that's been an exciting group to see. We don't see Kansas City, like I said, doing the NFC package with Fox, but I will this year now with Thursday nights, and I've got to believe that they're right up there with the Rams as far as offensive firepower.
How much heat does Frank Reich deserve with his play calling there, not going for the tie?
That was a little bit of a head scratcher. I think primarily because if you don't make it there, unlike Vrabel, if you don't make it there, then just one pass and all of a sudden you're losing the game. Whereas with Mike Vrabel going for it, they weren't close to giving up a field goal, and all that. So. There's no doubt that the success of the Eagles last year, going forward on fourth down, and Frank Reich being a part of that team, has changed, I think, the approach with a number of coaches. And I think that played into it yesterday. And I heard what everyone said after the game, and I'd have to, you don't want to tie, but you'd rather tie than lose. So that's probably one he'd like to have back. But when you have the hindsight of the results, then it's easy to say that. But at the time, I thought that it was a pretty risky call, and it ended up backfiring on him.
But if you're the quarterback, don't you love that? Or your team, like you, I know we look at the results, but if in the moment, you're like, hell yeah. Like if you're Andrew Luck, aren't you saying that? Or are you thinking,
Yeah, I think
know.
so. I believe so. I was in '95. I was with the Cowboys when Barry Switzer went for it twice on 4th and 1, and we didn't make it, and had a penalty the first time. We went for it again, and we were backed up. We ended up losing the game, and I was all for that decision because I felt that with the conditions in the game that if we didn't pick up the first down there, we were going to lose anyway. And we saw Bill Belichick go for it against Peyton when he was with the Colts, backed up, and he felt that if they didn't make the first down there on 4th down, they were going to lose the game anyway. And so I think there's something to be said for that. I didn't disagree with Belichick's call at the time. I didn't disagree with Switzer's call at the time. The circumstances, I think, were a little bit different. But I think in the long run, if you play aggressively, I do like that. I think there's a tendency for coaches to play a little bit too close to the vest. I think for the most part, coaches make decisions because it's what's going to draw the least amount of scrutiny after the fact. So on the one hand, you'd say, yeah, I mean, good for Frank, believing in his team and trying to pull out a win. It just didn't work, and whether or not he makes that same decision in the future, we'll find out. But, it's just disappointing then that you have a tie and you ultimately end up losing the game.
Troy, good to visit with you again. Tell Joe we said hello, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
We sure will. Thanks, Dan.
Hi, bud.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.